It is day 2 of Newsletter XP. I am the co-proctor lecturer of this very not buttoned up class, but very information packed class. Tyler is my co-host. Actually, there's a third co-proctor. He wasn't here yesterday, but I want to introduce you to him. 1 second. Rambo, come on. Get on your A game, buddy. He loves to give me all of his dead weight when he's shy. This is Rambo. He is a big fan of email and deliverability, so he'll be paying close attention today.
Well, one of the best open rates in the industry he has. So we're going to have him speak a little bit later and walk through all of his best practices and secrets, but Rambo has a killer newsletter.
He does. It's great. So we are going to start, as we did yesterday, with some slides. Tyler is going to be leading those with Sergey, and then we're going to get into Q&A with our guests, Dan Oshinsky and Brian Morrissey, in a little bit. So, Tyler, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, and just Brian's eating his dinner right now. We got pizza fresh out of the oven, so thank you for joining us. And then we were going to have Yana Tori join for the deliverability session. She actually couldn't make it, so we have her co-founder, Sergey, joining us for deliverability. He's been doing deliverability for 14 plus years. I'd also say I feel like there's going to be a ton of questions related to deliverability, so you have the upvote link. Before we even get into the content, if there are any deliverability related questions that you have, feel free to drop them in. And then Sergey can assist with that.
And then 2 other quick things. One is deliverability. When you hear the word, it may send a shiver down your spine. It's not like a fun sounding topic, but it's impossible to say that you take email seriously if you don't take deliverability seriously. So take this conversation tonight very seriously. I remember in the, not just the early days of the brew, the entirety of when Tyler was at Morning Brew, how many hours he spent and we spent collectively thinking about how can we maximize deliverability? Because you spend all this time writing a newsletter, you at least deserve to get it to land in the inboxes of the people you want to read it. If you don't take that second part seriously, why are you writing the content in the first place, was kind of how we thought about it. So super important tonight. And I also want to give a shout out to Sergey, because I could be wrong, but my guess is he is the person who's up latest on this lecture call tonight. I think it's 1 a.m. where he is. If you're up later than 1 a.m. on this class, huge props to you. Mention in the chat if you are, because I'm very impressed. But thank you, Sergey, for doing this. Tyler, floor is yours.
Cool. Yeah, and real quick story on that deliverability front. When I was first hired at Morning Brew, I was growth engineer with the idea of building the email list and growing it. One of the first things I did month 1 was cut the list in half once I understood what deliverability meant. And I don't think I won a ton of fans day 1 from doing that, but it paid off in huge dividends. So we'll get into all of that. This course is very additive and compounds on top of each other. So yesterday focused on content and template and design. Today is email as a channel and deliverability. Tomorrow's growth. Wednesday is monetization. So it all starts to build on top of each other. And with that, we'll dive into why email. So just the power of email at large. You can invest in video. You can invest in all these different forms of media. I think everyone on this course is a huge fan of email, rightfully so. And the reason why email is so powerful is it kind of goes against the grain of social media and algorithm-driven platforms. The classic example there is there's a push for Facebook to get all of the publishers to invest in growing massive channels, spending a ton of money to get likes and followers on Facebook, with the promise that their content will be distributed between Facebook, Instagram, whatever. And then in a blink of an eye, Facebook made a decision to pivot into actually focusing on groups and friend-to-friend connections, and the thousands and tens of thousands of dollars that these publishers spent to grow an audience, their content just wasn't being distributed. So email is kind of a hedge bet against those types of platforms where you don't have much control over what content is being distributed and how frequently. You own the relationship with your audience. So people are opting in and giving you their email address. And so you have the ability to contact them directly where they are. The audience is portable. And so once you collect these emails and you have your email list of 10, 15, 20,000 people, whatever it may be, you can send from MailChimp. And if you decide you want to move over to Beehive, you can pick up your list and move it there. If Beehive isn't satisfying your needs as a sender, you can pick up your list and move it somewhere else. But that's very different than if I can't take my 7,000 followers from Twitter and move it to Instagram, I'd love to. So if you want to follow me on Instagram, feel free. But the audiences on these social platforms aren't as portable as email. It's also built on an open framework. So SMTP is open, where you can plug into your favorite email service type, where you can use Gmail, Apple, AOL, Yahoo. You can use different clients. You can use Superhuman. It's very open in what you're using. And so you aren't forced to use an app going through the App Store and everything that these social media platforms have to deal with in terms of distributing content. I think broadly people are tied to their inbox, right? Like I use it all day long. I use it for work. People use it for miscellaneous, like tracking appointments, doing work related stuff. So as far as like, if your goal is to get in front of different people, the inbox is like an incredibly valuable real estate to distribute content. And then lastly, and I'm sure Alex can add to this list, is it's a push medium. I think Kendall hit the nail on the head yesterday with people don't go to websites anymore. There was a time when I was in college where I would visit TechCrunch every single day to see the top tech news, what startups were getting funded. And that was a behavior that I established to go visit TechCrunch. Now I subscribe to 10 different tech newsletters that feed me the content I want, because I trust those writers and their curation to feed me news that I believe is relevant. And so the constant push versus pull, I think, is really important. And the power of email and meeting people where they already are is an extremely powerful nudge to build that behavior.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add is I think email is one of maybe two, let's call it like push mediums, that I would also say consumers are primed to receive what I would call professional content. Professional content meaning content that is in correspondence with like your friends, your family, etc. And by saying that, what I leave out is largely like SMS. Like I think people have been talking about text being an incredibly powerful, high upside tool for businesses for a long time, but I don't think it's yet crossed the chasm, because I think people still view text as this very intimate place that is meant for family, friends, etc., for personal communication. But I think email has kind of crossed the chasm where you're fine with personal correspondence or professional. And just a quick anecdote, Tyler laid out all of these, I would say, very thoughtful reasons for why email is very valuable. When we started Morning Brew, we did not think about any of these. We weren't like aware of why it was so powerful. We very much just said, one, it's really cheap, which is a power of email. Like, except I would say largely most content these days isn't super expensive to start up or create. But for us, we were like, we're not going to spend on creating an app. We were in college. We didn't have enough money to spend on that. And so MailChimp, in the early days of the business, I think we were spending, I don't know, like $29 a month, something very cheap. And then the other big thing we said was, how do we create content that someone opts into that already integrates with how they're behaving in their lives? And like Tyler mentioned, for college students at Michigan, they were already using their email addresses. And so for us, it was like, we already had so many hurdles in trying to get people's trust with business news when there were so many other institutions out there. What we didn't want to also have to overcome was teaching people a new behavior. And with email, you already have a built-in behavior.
Nice. And then also just like building on top of that, like I think a lot of inspiration for a ton of you here, just like these are email first businesses where, again, building on yesterday, email being the product, tons of acquisitions in the space as people continue to see the value in what email can be as a business. Also, plenty of email upstarts. We actually have Adam Ryan of Workweek speaking on Thursday alongside the co-founder of Puck. Max is joining us on Thursday. Every is another collection of newsletters. It's like a bundle. So you sign up, you pay a subscription, you can opt into different newsletters. And I think it's 6 a.m. City. I always blank on the time. Yeah, 6 a.m. City is the local newsletters at these different city level. So a bunch of additional media upstarts that are all focused and betting on email. That being said, it's not like the perfect channel. The limitations of email, and there's plenty of them. It was created in the 70s, and so it definitely acts like that. You can't add video. I get that question daily. I got it 2 hours ago on Twitter. You just video is not supported in
I
email.
feel like that for the history of Morning Brew, we had different people every 6 months to a year telling us that they had found the crystal key to put video in email that you could play in email. And by, I would say, 3 years into the business, we were just like, you're full of shit. There is zero way that it's actually possible.
And like there's like a caveat of that, like there's definitely inboxes that are a little bit more tech forward, whether it's Apple Mail or Gmail, and like AMP has been explored. But you have to realize that that might be 10, 20, 30% of your recipients. So something that works in like Gmail doesn't look good in Outlook 2003 for the people still using that, or Outlook 2017 for that matter. And so you kind of always have to play down to like the lowest common denominator of, if it works on one platform but not the other 18 inboxes, then the people who use those 18 inboxes are going to be very unhappy. So email is limiting from a design standpoint as well. We hit on that yesterday. Like images are kind of a workaround to make it look better, but you are limited in design and functionality with email. There's limited amounts of data you can collect. So you have your subscriber list, you get open rate, click through rate, spam rate. But outside of that, like I would say open rate and click through rate are kind of like the main two metrics that you get from email. And as privacy becomes more and more emphasized with the things like Apple and iOS, whatever version it is, they're actually restricting the accuracy of what some of those data points are in open rate. And so there's already so few valuable data points. The fact that they're being more obscured is another pretty massive limitation of email, I would say. Deliverability, which we'll get to shortly, is definitely a black box for most people. And I'd say while there's not algorithms per se, like a Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, there's an algorithm of some sort with sorting mail into the inbox. And Gmail doesn't publicize that for many reasons. And so deliverability, even for like the biggest senders like a Morning Brew, like there's best practices, but there isn't like a surefire, like this is exactly what's happening under the hood. And it's incredibly frustrating. Hence why a lot of people of you are on this call to learn about deliverability. And then cross-client compatibility can be difficult. For this is a screenshot from, I think, Email on Acid, but what it's showing in a very low pixelated way is how a particular email looks across like Outlook, AOL 2013, AOL 2017, Apple Mail Mobile, Apple Mail Desktop. And so the way that your email goes out and looks in different people's inboxes based on their settings, so you toss on dark mode as well, it's very difficult. Where like Instagram is Instagram, it looks the same whether you're using an iPhone or an Android or whatever else. And so the fact that, well, fortunately Beehive covers this and we've tested it a ton, so your template looks good in all these different clients, but it's a total pain in the ass to build, and it's definitely a massive limitation of email. And I think just running through the core metrics, I think most of you are familiar with these, but you have active subscribers, the number of people that have opted into your list. Open rate, I always go off of the unique open rate of unique people. I know some email service providers and newsletters may actually quote total open rate, which I think is total bullshit. If someone
Bullshit.
What that means is like if someone opens the email, say you have, I don't know, 10 people on your list and one person of those 10 opens it 10 times, you could have a 200% open rate because you got 20 opens with 10 people. That doesn't make sense to me. So what Beehive does, and I think most ESPs are leaning into, is that it's the total amount of unique people who have opened an email. But it's worth calling out because not everyone quotes unique.
Also, Tyler, you would know this better, but like I know I'm not in the weeds of it today at the brew, but I know we don't focus on unique open rate even anymore because with Apple's whatever it's called, Apple tracking transparency, like open rates have been thrown off like pretty significantly in the last several months. And so like we can't even report to advertisers opens because it's not the right number, slash when we spend on Facebook marketing or Instagram marketing to acquire new emails, doing like using subscribers who have a certain open rate as a barometer isn't necessarily representative of a high quality subscriber. And so I know we've shifted a lot of our focus to click through rate and subscribers who click on the newsletter.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great call out. I actually think we should save that for the Q&A with Dan and Brian. I think
Perfect.
they'd be great to talk on that. But yeah, I'm going to run through these fairly quickly. I think they're pretty straightforward. Click-through rate is the amount of unique clicks per unique opens. I know that also differs per ESP. I'm curious Dan's take on that later. But I think the denominator here is unique opens. If someone doesn't open the newsletter, they just received it. They obviously can't click on anything. And so we use the denominator of unique opens. Click rate's just kind of like the frequency of clicks per newsletter. Upgrade rate is more for premium subscriptions, but the percentage of people who upgrade to a paying subscription from free, we'll go into that in much more detail on Wednesday. Unsubscribe rate, pretty straightforward. The percentage of people who are unsubscribing to any given post or campaign. And then I guess differing from using unique opens as the denominator, spam rate is actually, I think, and actually Sergey might be great to speak to this, but spam rate, I think the denominator is people who receive the newsletter. That's what I think the inboxes are looking at. So if you send an email to 10,000 people and 1,000 people mark as spam, so 10%, which is an absurd amount, like that is a big indication of what inboxes are looking at for deliverability, which we'll get to in a second. Length of subscription, pretty straightforward. But the average time it takes for someone to either unsubscribe or mark as spam, essentially churn. And then broadly taking a step back, just the newsletter landscape. There's analytics platforms where you can export data into like a Looker or other platforms. There's surveys to collect information. So MailChimp, Typeform, email providers like MailChimp, SendGrid, courses, Teachable, adverts. There's like Power Inbox and Live Intent, which we'll talk again more on Wednesday. There's referral platforms, there's subscription, there's web hosting. Job boards is another monetization stream for different newsletters that we mentioned yesterday and again on Wednesday. And then also the community aspect, whether it's Discord, Slack. And this is like, not that every newsletter needs all of these, but these are like the different components and constituent parts of a lot of these different email strategies, whether you're leaning more into community, whether you're growing with referrals. Beehive has analytics, surveys, email, adverts, referrals, subscription, web. So it's missing a few of those, but maybe an indication of our roadmap of where we go from here. But this is kind of like the total package of what I have seen as a consumer and working in the newsletter ecosystem. And then key takeaways for just email as a channel. It's a reliable bet against algorithms and different platforms that have control over how your content is being distributed. But also as a medium, there's a ton of limitations, both in design, functionality, and the data that's available. It's very low cost to get started and very scalable, which is why a lot of businesses are investing in it. There was a point at Morning Brew when I think there was 5 of us, someone selling ads, someone growing, someone doing the engineering, and then 1 or 2 writers. And we were more or less printing 40, 50K a day as a 5-person operation. And so the scalability of whether you're writing to 10 people or to 10,000 people or 10 million people, the underlying cost and software may change, but the actual process is more or less the same. And so I think that is the power of email and newsletters as a whole. That could have been a very nice lifestyle business if Morning Brew didn't go the venture route. I guess, Alex, you came off mute if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, no, I would just say one of my favorite things that a buddy of mine says is that media businesses, or specifically email businesses, are like the OG software business, where it's like you have a relatively high fixed cost. That fixed cost is effectively the time you put in to build an audience, but then your variable cost for every additional person who subscribes to your newsletter and who you monetize is as close to zero as it gets. And so, yeah, it's just a beautiful thing to continue expanding the margin of your business as more people subscribe, but the cost doesn't go up.
And then the landscape as a whole, like as I mentioned, in like the landscape of email as a whole, whether it's the referrals and the web and the email sending and data, it's like very overwhelming. There's tons of options. So just doing your diligence and understanding that you need to optimize for a platform and an ecosystem that has the flexibility and growth and upside that you need to build your business. So just something to consider when choosing different software vendors.